What drives a person to achieve almost divine fame, captivate crowds with a magnetic presence, and appear untouchable until, suddenly, everything is brutally taken away? Princess Diana, known as the People's Princess, had a journey that seems more like a movie script than a real-life story. But behind all the glamour and tragedy, there are hints that her meteoric rise might be connected to something far darker, a pact with the devil himself. Could it be that Diana, in her search for love, acceptance, and a greater role in the world, made a supernatural agreement that gave her everything she desired but forced her to pay the ultimate price? And if so, what signs reveal this connection? Diana Spencer was born on July 1, 1961, into a British aristocratic family. However, despite her noble lineage, her childhood was marked by profound insecurities and a sense of emotional emptiness. Her parents' early divorce left scars on her psyche, and accounts from those close to her reveal that Diana often mentioned feeling invisible, or as if she were destined for something grand yet unattainable. This search for purpose, many believe, could have made her vulnerable to darker spiritual influences. From a young age, Diana exhibited a peculiar curiosity about spiritual themes. Her governess once mentioned that Diana was fascinated by stories of magic and the occult, which were often present in the books at her home. Moreover, the place where she grew up, Althorpe House, was surrounded by legends of spiritual activity. The hills nearby were known for ancient pagan ceremonies performed by druids, and local residents reported sightings of hooded figures on nights of the full moon. But why would this matter? Locations with histories steeped in magic and intense spirituality are known for amplifying the energy of those who live there. Could it be that Diana, with her natural curiosity and desperate quest for something greater, attempted to channel these forces? Perhaps, at some point in her youth, she made a plea to entities she believed could help her escape the shadow of her family. In her teenage years, Diana began to display signs of an almost magnetic personality. Although shy, she had a peculiar way of drawing the attention of those around her. Teachers and classmates often remarked that she seemed to have something special, an inexplicable presence that made it impossible to ignore her. Could this magnetism have been a reflection of something deeper beginning to emerge? Another intriguing aspect of her youth was her strong attraction to astrology and the mysteries of the universe. Diana was fascinated by what the stars might reveal about destiny. She consulted astrological charts and appeared to believe that her future was intrinsically tied to something predestined. Could it be that, in trying to understand her purpose, she went further than she should have, attracting forces she didn't fully understand? When Diana met Prince Charles for the first time, she was merely a shy and, in many ways, ordinary young woman. Yet it didn't take long for him to become intrigued by her, even though he was in a serious relationship with another woman. What might have made Diana, seemingly without remarkable attributes that distinguished her from other women of the aristocracy, so irresistible in the eyes of the future king? Some say Diana's fate was shaped during this time, but was it merely fate? What if there was something or someone whispering promises in her ear, ensuring she would achieve a place of power and influence? This kind of thought may seem fantastical, but it's exactly how stories of dark pacts often begin, with a burning desire and a tempting opportunity. As she entered adulthood, Diana seemed to be on an inexplicably rapid rise. She went from being a kindergarten teacher to a central figure on the royal family's radar in a short period. To what extent was this the result of circumstances, or could something more sinister have been at play? After all, the desire to belong and the ambition for a greater purpose are open doors for forces beyond one's control. What makes it all the more mysterious is that Diana never seemed completely happy, even in her moments of glory. She was often described as melancholic and lonely, even when surrounded by crowds of admirers. What if this feeling of emptiness was the result of a deal that, while bringing glory, also exacted a toll on her peace of mind? Have you ever considered how the circumstances of an apparently ordinary life might conceal secrets that defy reality? From childhood, Diana Spencer exhibited a restlessness that went beyond the ordinary. Despite growing up surrounded by privilege in the British aristocracy, she seemed to feel that her life was destined for something greater, a fate beyond her immediate reach. This yearning for ascension, for a place at the center of something grand, is not uncommon in stories of hidden pacts. It is precisely this intense pursuit that, according to esoteric traditions, attracts the attention of entities such as Belial. Belial, known in various occult traditions as the demon of pride and ambition, has a singular reputation. He chooses those who carry an internal flame of dissatisfaction, those who reject the status quo and yearn for more. Diana, born into an aristocratic family already guaranteed a place in British history, seemed destined for a comfortable but unremarkable life. Yet something about her energy suggested she wanted more. Could it have been this burning desire that caught Belial's attention? Diana was not the primary heir to the Spencer fortune and lived in the shadow of family expectations. Even so, she stood out early on, showing an unusual ability to attract attention, even without actively seeking it. In stories of Pacts, this is one of the first signs of influence, a presence that, though subtle, cannot be ignored. This characteristic in Diana, which grew exponentially after her engagement to Prince Charles, might have been a reflection of Belial's whisper. When Charles chose Diana as his future wife, many were surprised. He was already emotionally involved with Camilla Parker Bowles, a woman who seemed like the logical choice. Yet Diana emerged as an irresistible figure. Her youth, appearance, and demeanor enchanted the prince in a way that seemed inexplicable. Could Belial, known for manipulating situations to favor his chosen ones, have played a role in this encounter? Belial does not grant his gifts without purpose. He seeks individuals who, once elevated, can cause impact and change. Diana, with her authenticity and vulnerability, quickly became the public's favorite, transforming into the people's princess. Her natural magnetism seemed to grow with each public appearance, leading crowds to see her as more than a princess. She became a symbol. Can this be explained by charisma alone, or was there an invisible force amplifying her presence? Diana's rise to the center of the British monarchy came with an obvious cost. The loneliness and isolation she faced within the royal system seemed to increase in proportion to her growing impact on the world. This duality is characteristic of stories of Pacts with Belial. He grants glory and prominence, but the price is often paid in emotional suffering. By marrying Charles, Diana not only entered a union but also a system that would erode her personal happiness. Another intriguing point is the contrast between the monarchy's rigid structure and the liberating energy associated with Belial. Diana seemed to fight against the traditions and expectations imposed on her, constantly seeking ways to express her individuality. Could this desire for freedom have been a direct manifestation of Belial's influence, an entity known for challenging authority and subverting systems? Diana's journey also suggests moments when her impact seemed to transcend circumstances. Her ability to connect with people, especially during times of crisis, was almost supernatural. She had a way of making crowds feel seen and heard, even when physical distance was immense. In occult traditions, Belial is described as a master of emotional manipulation, granting his chosen ones the ability to deeply touch the hearts of others. However, there is a price for this influence. As Diana became more adored by the public, her marriage began to crumble. The energy that seemed to elevate her as a public figure also seemed to consume her personal life. This is another hallmark of stories of Pacts with Belial, the creation of a duality where success in one aspect of life is balanced by losses in another. Did Diana feel she was being forced to pay for her ascension? Diana was also known for challenging norms of behavior within the royal family. Her openness, willingness to break protocols, and unique humanitarian approach made her a revolutionary figure within the monarchy. Belial, often associated with rebellion and insubordination, might have found in Diana the perfect ally to challenge an institution as powerful and conservative as the British monarchy. At the same time, her connection with people seemed to transcend logic. It was not just what Diana did, but how she did it. She appeared to carry an aura of purpose, as if she knew she had a greater role to play. In interviews, she often mentioned feeling that she had a mission, though she never fully explained what it was. Could this have been an echo of a spiritual pact she herself did not fully understand? Belial, as a demon tied to pride and ambition, also works with the concept of destiny. He shapes the paths of his chosen ones so they achieve their goals, but always with consequences. Diana, who began her life as an ordinary young aristocrat, became one of the most influential figures of her generation. Was this trajectory a reflection of Belial's unseen work? Diana's influence on the world was so great that, even after her death, she continued to be remembered as a symbol of change and humanity. Belial, known for shaping the stories of his chosen ones so they leave a lasting impact, seems to have found in Diana the perfect tool. But was she aware of the price she was paying for this influence? Diana's journey within the monarchy and the suffering she endured raises the question: was the cost of her ascension part of a larger plan or merely the result of human choices? It is impossible to ignore how invisible forces seem to have shaped the events of her life. Diana's life, under the spotlight of royalty, was marked by enigmatic details that many believe are connected to something far beyond the visible. From the start of her public life, she seemed drawn to choices and behaviors suggesting a deeper connection to mysticism and symbolism. The way she presented herself to the world transcended the image of a modern princess and, for some, appeared imbued with hidden meanings. A clear example lies in her choices of jewelry and accessories. Diana was frequently seen wearing pieces that symbolized more than beauty or elegance. Her iconic sapphire ring, for instance, was not merely a symbol of her engagement to Charles, but, in esoteric traditions, is seen as a stone of spiritual protection and mental focus, often associated with rituals to strengthen pacts. This association went unnoticed by many, but those more attentive question: why would a woman who seemed to follow her own path, defying so many conventions, choose a stone so laden with symbolism? It wasn't just the ring. Her pearls, seen in one context as emblems of purity, also carry meanings tied to tears and sacrifice. Was she aware of these meanings when wearing them? Or perhaps the symbols were part of something beyond her conscious choices, connecting to forces she herself did not fully understand? Beyond her accessories, Diana's connection to mystical places stands out. Throughout her life as a princess, she visited sites with strong spiritual and historical energy, such as the Taj Mahal and Stonehenge. The Taj Mahal, a monument to eternal love, seemed to reflect her search for true love, while Stonehenge, a site of pagan ceremonies, was part of a trip Diana took shortly before her wedding. These visits cannot be mere coincidences, considering her attraction to spiritual and mystical themes. According to esoteric beliefs, places like these amplify the intentions of those who visit them. What was Diana seeking in these locations? Was she attempting to connect with something greater or find answers to the internal challenges she faced? Even at public events, Diana seemed to radiate an almost magnetic presence. It wasn't just charisma, it was something more. Many who encountered her described an inexplicable sensation in her presence, as if she could transmit comfort and connection in a supernatural way. Psychologists might interpret this as an innate ability, but it's hard not to wonder: was this magnetism purely human, or was it tied to hidden forces that, in some way, accompanied her? Diana was also tormented by disturbing dreams, which she mentioned to close friends. These dreams, according to her, often involved images of being pursued, omens of betrayal, and a sense that something was constantly watching her. What could these dreams signify? In occult traditions, such dreams are often seen as manifestations of entities that have established a bond or are demanding something from those with whom they have made an agreement. Had Diana unconsciously attracted these forces? Or was she suffering the consequences of something already agreed upon? Over time, Diana's life began to exhibit an unsettling paradox. Despite all her success, glamour, and public adoration, she seemed increasingly distant from genuine happiness. Her struggles with depression and bulimia, as well as her tumultuous marriage, suggested that, despite all she had, something profoundly important was missing. What if this emptiness was the cost of a pact? Could it be that she had made an agreement granting her fame and influence but robbing her of inner peace? Diana's relationship with death was also notable. She often mentioned that she didn't believe she would live long. Accounts from friends indicate that she made these statements not with fear, but with the acceptance of something inevitable. To many, these remarks were interpreted as a sign of her sensitivity and intuition. However, in light of theories about pacts, this takes on another meaning. In stories about hidden agreements, premature death is a recurring element, especially when the individual achieves global impact in a short time. Could Diana have already felt the weight of a debt she knew would be collected? Even in moments when she seemed to free herself from the constraints of the royal family, Diana was never entirely liberated. There was always a sense that something, perhaps something invisible, continued to follow her. This unease is evident in her interviews and speeches, where, despite her steady voice, a subtle melancholy lingered. What made her appear so confident yet so vulnerable at the same time? Her death, years later, would only intensify these questions. But before delving into the details of that tragedy, it's essential to ask, Was Diana's life the reflection of spiritual choices made in pursuit of power and purpose? If so, when exactly did it all begin? Diana Spencer lived a life oscillating between enchantment and torment. Her personal magnetism made her one of the most adored figures on the planet, while her private life was a battleground of conflicts, jealousy, and betrayal. For those who believe in hidden forces shaping destinies, the mark of Asmodeus, the demon of desire, pleasure, and the destruction of relationships, seems evident in the most intimate and chaotic aspects of Diana's life. Asmodeus is known as a force that amplifies desire and fascination but destroys emotional stability and romantic bonds. Unlike Belial, whose influence manifests in pride and ambition, Asmodeus acts directly on relationships, transforming passion into obsession and attraction into destruction. Diana's love life, marked by intense connections and breakups, directly reflects this duality. Could this invisible force have been acting on her life from the moment she entered the public sphere? When Diana married Charles, the world celebrated what appeared to be a fairy tale. But from the start, it was clear that the relationship was unstable. Charles maintained an emotional connection with Camilla Parker Bowles, while Diana desperately sought love and security. This type of emotional imbalance is characteristic of Asmodeus's influence, which not only intensifies desire but also creates barriers to harmony in relationships. At the same time, Diana seemed to wield an irresistible power over everyone around her. She not only attracted the attention of powerful and charismatic men, but also inspired a near-religious devotion from the public. Her ability to captivate crowds and emotionally connect with people was extraordinary, even for a public figure. But what made Diana seem so different? In occult traditions, Asmodeus is often described as a force that amplifies desire and obsession, making his chosen figures of intense attraction. This energy also appeared in the media's relationship with Diana. Paparazzi and journalists were obsessively focused on capturing details of her private life, especially her relationships. Unlike other royals, media coverage of Diana was extremely focused on her intimacy, emotions, and personal connections. Was this obsession merely the result of her popularity, or something deeper, perhaps a manifestation of Asmodeus's power over her life? In stories of Pacts, Asmodeus often acts as an amplifier of energy, turning human traits into irresistible forces. For Diana, her natural empathy and compassion seemed elevated to an almost superhuman level. At the same time, this placed her in situations where it was difficult to separate the authenticity of her connections from the emotional intensity surrounding her. This precarious balance, between the power to attract and the emotional toll of lacking stability, is one of the clearest signs of Asmodeus's influence. Another striking aspect of Diana's life was her struggle with jealousy and betrayal. Charles and Camilla represented an open wound in her marriage, while Diana sought solace in other relationships. These complex and destructive dynamics can be seen as a direct reflection of Asmodeus's influence, which stirs desire but sabotages peace. Was Diana trapped in a cycle where each new attempt at love resulted in more pain and chaos? Even in her appearance, Diana exhibited something beyond conventional beauty. Her aura seemed to radiate an irresistible energy, something that transcended common explanations. Psychologists might attribute this to her natural charisma, but occult traditions offer another perspective. Those influenced by Asmodeus often carry a magnetic energy that attracts not only attention but also desire and fascination. Diana seemed to embody this description perfectly. Diana's relationship with her admirers was also unusual. She wasn't just loved, she was idolized. The public saw her as more than a princess. She was a symbol of humanity and empathy. But this adoration came with an emotional burden Diana carried alone. Could this emotional weight have been part of the price for her influence? In interviews, Diana often mentioned feeling divided between two forces, one that lifted her up and another that pulled her down. This duality is characteristic of stories involving Asmodeus, who frequently grants power to his chosen ones but immerses them in emotional turmoil. Could Diana, even unknowingly, have been battling the consequences of a spiritual pact shaping her life? Even when seeking love outside her marriage, Diana seemed unable to find the stability she desired. Relationships with influential figures like Dodi Al-Fayed carried the promise of happiness but always ended abruptly or tragically. This pattern of intense connections leading to suffering is a hallmark of Asmodeus, who amplifies desire but makes lasting harmony impossible to achieve. Despite this, Diana found solace in her humanitarian efforts. Her work with social causes and her connection with marginalized groups transformed her into a global symbol of compassion. Yet even this aspect of her life seemed wrapped in a constant tension between light and shadow. Diana was adored by the public, but often felt isolated and misunderstood. This duality is another reflection of Asmodeus's impact, creating lives marked by brilliance and chaos. As Diana struggled to balance these forces, her life seemed driven by a destiny she did not entirely control. The influence of Asmodeus, if present, not only shaped her love life but also amplified the highs and lows that defined her journey. Did Diana know she was caught in a cycle where every victory was balanced by a loss? As we approach her death, the mark of Asmodeus becomes even more evident. Her passing, shrouded in mysteries and symbolic coincidences, suggests that the price of her influence and fascination was greater than anyone could have imagined. But to fully understand the significance of her death, we must consider another force that may have played a crucial role: Moloch, the archetype of ultimate sacrifice. Diana's death on August 31, 1997, in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel remains one of the most enigmatic events of the 20th century. Officially attributed to a car accident caused by paparazzi chasing her vehicle, the circumstances surrounding her tragedy are filled with disturbing symbolism and coincidences. What if her death wasn't merely the result of a tragic and chaotic event, but the fulfillment of a much older debt, a price paid to a greater force? When analyzing the pieces of this puzzle, the figure of Moloch, the ancient demon associated with sacrifices and power pacts, emerges as a possible key to understanding Diana's destiny. Moloch, in various traditions, is described as a god or demon who demands sacrifices to ensure lasting power and prosperity. In ancient times, he was often linked to the offering of precious lives in transition rituals, marked by promises of eternal glory. When observing the events leading up to Diana's death, it's impossible to ignore the parallels between sacrifices made to Moloch and what occurred on that fateful night in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The site of the accident, Pont de l'Alma, holds an ancient history imbued with spiritual symbolism. During Celtic times, it was a site of worship and sacrifice dedicated to the goddess Diana, a notable connection considering the princess's name. However, it's important to note that in many ancient pagan rituals, the energy of a deity like Diana could be diverted or absorbed in a sacrifice to Moloch. Locations like these were seen as portals or natural altars, ideal for rituals requiring significant transitions, such as offering a life in exchange for prosperity for a nation or lineage. And then there's the name Alma. In several languages, it means soul or vital essence. Was this tunnel merely the accidental setting of a tragedy, or did its history and name make it the perfect site for a symbolic sacrifice? Diana, who already carried an aura of sanctity, could have been offered in a greater ritual, ensuring the balance of invisible forces operating in the world. Another detail reinforcing this narrative is the number of the pillar the car struck, the 13th. In many cultures and occult traditions, the number 13 is associated with death and transformation. For Moloch, who demands something in exchange for renewal and continuity, the 13th pillar could symbolize the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. The impact at the 13th pillar, in this context, would not be a coincidence but a symbolic marker that a pact had been fulfilled. Witnesses to the accident reported an intriguing phenomenon moments before the crash: an intense, inexplicable light within the tunnel. Described as a blinding light, its origin was never fully explained by official investigations. Bright lights, in occult contexts, are often associated with the presence of supernatural entities or the culmination of a ritual. Could this light be evidence of Moloch's presence or of forces ensuring the sacrifice was carried out? Diana seemed to sense that her death was near. In letters to friends, she expressed fears that something planned was about to happen. These premonitions, far from being unfounded paranoia, could reflect a deep intuition that her role in a greater narrative was about to be fulfilled. Moloch, as an entity demanding sacrifices, is often associated with this sense of inevitability among those who make or are part of a pact. The time Diana was declared dead, 4 a.m., also carries occult symbolism. Known in spiritual traditions as the dead hour, it is the moment when the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is thinnest. Significant transitions, births, deaths, and rituals are often synchronized with this time to ensure maximum spiritual impact. Diana's death occurring at this time suggests it was carefully chosen, perhaps as part of a larger ritual. After her death, Diana was elevated to an almost divine status. Her image transcended the limitations of an ordinary public figure, transforming into a symbol of compassion, sacrifice, and change. In stories involving Moloch, it is common for the sacrifice of a powerful figure to result in lasting benefits for those who performed it. The unsettling question arises: who benefited from Diana's death? Diana's funeral reinforced her sacrality. Conducted with unusual grandeur for someone no longer officially part of the royal family, it was an event of global resonance. The choice of the song, "Candle in the Wind," with its reference to a prematurely extinguished light, is particularly symbolic. In rituals associated with Moloch, the extinguished flame represents both the end of a life and the continuity of the energy generated by the sacrifice. Diana's death, in this context, can be seen as a transition that solidified her legacy but also marked a renewal for those connected to her. Moloch's figure is intimately tied to the collective impact of a sacrifice. When a life is offered, especially one with great influence, the impact is felt far beyond the individual realm. Diana, even decades after her death, continues to be venerated as a modern martyr. This veneration is not merely a natural consequence of her personality and charisma. It reflects the spiritual power released by her death, which continues to resonate in the collective unconscious. Diana seemed to live divided between two forces, one elevating her to the status of a global icon and another pulling her into profound loneliness. This duality can be understood as the cost of a pact. Her public ascension and global impact were balanced by internal suffering that culminated in her death. The Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the 13th pillar, the inexplicable light, and the global impact of her death point to an event that transcends earthly explanations. Connecting these pieces to Moloch's archetype reveals Diana's sacrifice as part of a greater narrative, one we may never fully comprehend. What truly happened on that fateful night? Was Diana the victim of an accident or an unwitting participant in a ritual that ensured her legacy and the continuity of invisible forces? The symbolism is undeniable, but the answers remain in the shadows, like Moloch himself, always present but never seen. Diana's life, from her meteoric rise to royalty to her tragic death, is marked by a series of events and symbols that defy conventional explanations. Her connection to mystical places, her intuition about destiny, and the ritualistic elements surrounding her death fuel the idea that forces beyond understanding may have shaped her trajectory. If a pact did exist, her story prompts us to reflect on the cost of achieving power, influence, and symbolic immortality. While these theories remain speculative, they raise a fascinating question. To what extent are history's great events governed by chance or by unseen forces? Diana became more than a princess. She transformed into an eternal symbol of light and mystery, and her legacy continues to inspire debates about the boundaries between the mundane and the spiritual. And now I want to hear from you. What other spiritual themes would you like to see here? Leave your suggestions in the comments and help shape the channel's future content. If you're interested in exploring more about spirituality, I've specially selected some videos full of deep knowledge and fascinating discoveries for you to enjoy. Just click on one to begin. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step toward transforming your reality.